Okay, so now that I have my sketch complete with my measurements, I am going to go ahead and I'm going to measure the perimeter of my mat. So always remember that all of your measurements should go on the back of the mat board. So since the green is the front color that I want to be with the artwork, I want to draw on the back. So I'm going to turn this mat board so the green side is down. And then this has a really nice corner on it. It's a fresh piece of mat board, so it will work really well for what I am doing. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to measure out the height and width of the piece. So the height is going to be 18.5 and the width is going to be 31.5. Okay, and so I can, because I have a really nice corner on this mat board, I can just take my ruler, put it right flush against the edge of the mat board, and then go ahead and mark off my height, which is 18.5. My 18, this is my 1/2 inch right there. And I'm just gonna put a little tick mark right there. And then I can go ahead and do the same thing on the other side of the mat board. Okay, here I'm going to line up the 18.5 at the top here, and then go ahead and mark it down from the top of the mat board. And so by having two reference points across from each other that are against flush parallel edges, I can just connect this to find where my 18.5 line should go. So I will just make sure my ruler is lined up over here. And then I will hold it in place and line it up over here as well on the left. And then holding that nice and stable, I will just go ahead and make my pencil line across the piece. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure my 31.5, and so that I can do flush against the top edge. Okay, and I'm actually going to measure it from this side over, so I'm going to put my 31.5 right up against this corner, and then I'm gonna mark it right here, and ooh, I just made it by like a 1/2 inch to spare on this mat board. Okay, and then because this line is drawn, I can go ahead and just measure the 31.5 on here as well. Okay, and while that line is all lined up, I go over here, I find my 31.5. Okay, and then I'm going to match up my tick marks. Okay, so to cut the straight perimeter cuts on your window mat, you could of course go to the paper cutter and just cut this, especially since this is a smaller piece of mat board. It would fit in the paper cutter and I could just slice it like that. You could also get a cutting mat, a heavy ruler, and a utility knife or an X-Acto knife and cut the edge that way as well. I do want to show you how to use the Logan cutter to make straight cuts as well. So I'm going to set this to the side for a second. I'm going to open up the Logan mat cutter. So again, you need a teacher to get this for you. I'm going to open this up. Okay, when you open this up, those guides that I told you about will be right on top as long as someone stored it correctly. And those you will not need for any longer, so just put them to the side until you clean up the mat cutter and put it away. On the left and on the right, there are two cutting devices that go along with the mat cutter. So this one, which says bevel mat cutter on it, is to cut the windows. So that you can put to the side. This is the one that we're going to use first with this big handle on the top. This is the straight cutter, okay? So the straight cutter, you just have to be careful because the blade does stick out and you don't want to brush your finger against that. So just always be very careful when you're handling this blade. Once it's out of the box, you can put the box to the side. Okay. For straight cuts, you should not have this there, okay? So this is only for the bevel cuts, and that just makes the bevel cuts cut really nice and cleanly, so that you can also put to the side. The other thing that you will not need is the set scale. So you can actually unscrew these little guys, loosen them, and then you can pull the set scale out and just put that to the side as well. Okay, and then we're ready to do straight cuts. So the straight cuts, you're going to use the lines that you put on for the perimeter. So I only have 2 because I measured out from a nice straight 90-degree corner. Hopefully that's the case for you as well. And so what I want to do is I want to slide the mat board into the mat cutter. So the straight edge, which is this part, is right on one of my lines. Okay. And so I'm going to start with the long one down here at the bottom first. And so right now I am just adjusting the mat board so that way the line is directly under where the straight edge is, and it's lined up real nice and good to go. At this point, the next thing that I'm going to do is I want to make sure that I'm in position to cut really easily, and I'm going to put the straight cutter onto the straight edge. And so it has these 2 little notches in it right here that actually grip onto this little rail here to help you keep it straight. So it's really, really nice to be able to do that and to keep the blade on track. So there's a track here that these 2 little things are going to run onto. So just be careful when you're looking at those that you don't end up touching the blade. And so the blade, I always want to have that go onto the track before the mat board when I'm doing a straight cut. And so I see where the blade is right here, okay? And then I see the track, and I'm gonna put this on the track, and then I wanna guide this one on the track as well. Okay, at this point, before I actually start cutting the mat board, there's a couple things I want to do. I want to hold this down nice and stable. So you always want to keep your left hand, or if you're left-handed, your right hand, your non-dominant hand on this straight edge part. So that way it's nice and stable and it's gonna hold the mat board in place. If you don't do that and you pull this, the mat board's just gonna slide toward you, okay? And this is meant to pull, and you can see that by the way the grip is designed. The next thing that you do, so after you're holding that, you're gonna take this handle and then you have to push it down, okay? So if you actually look at this, you can see there's kind of like a spring portion in here, and when it's on the track, you need to push it down so that way it cuts the mat board. Okay, so I'm gonna put it back on the track. I'm gonna slide it so it's on the track, put my left hand here, push down, and then I'm just gonna pull. Okay, I got to a point where I'm gonna slide my left hand down because this is a pretty long piece. Okay, and if all goes well, you should have a nice clean cut like that. Okay, so now I'm going to cut the other shorter edge. That little piece that I had secured underneath the straight edge is floating under here. So you can just kind of gently pull this up. You just don't want to pull it a whole bunch because we want to keep this in nice order, and if you kind of muscle it up and around, it's going to damage the mat cutter. This piece can go in the recycling bin. In the meantime, I'm going to put this edge underneath